Hi, it's Rob Brown here with the seventh in our series of panel discussions with leaders of accounting networks alliances throughout the world. And I'm delighted to have with me today some very distinguished guests, Martin Bissett and Memoria Lewis. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in just a moment, and we're going to debate some of the topics that are going around today. We are in very uncertain times, and it is a time for a little bit of clarity, some strong leadership, some strong thinking, and we're going to ask our two guests today some very strong and controversial questions, and I'm sure we shan't get any sitting on the fence. Martin, can I get you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll go to Memoria?
Certainly, Rob. Thank you very much for the invite. My name is Martin Bissett, founder of the Bissett Group, which is a family of brands, which is 5 organisations and ventures that serve the accounting profession in different ways. And they include the Upward Spiral Professionals community, which is a group of accountants of varying sizes that are proactively minded to serving the SME rather than relying entirely on compliance work, and therefore look to be at the cutting edge of what's happening in the accounting profession. So all of my organisations serve the accounting profession, and my career within the accounting profession has lasted 22 years so far, but I'm neither an accountant by trade nor will I ever be.
You've done well to last this long then, Martin.
Yeah.
As somebody once said to me, Martin, you don't drink, you're not an accountant, and you don't play golf. How on earth have you lasted this long?
And the answer is?
The answer is hopefully content, I hope.
Memoria, welcome. Please give us a little introduction.
I'm delighted to be here, Rob. Lovely to meet you, Martin. I am a relatively new CEO of Morison KSI, an association of 150 independent professional service firms in 80 countries around the world. So we're truly global. My firm's core services are accounting, audit, tax, and advisory. It's an incredibly strong and supportive community. I think that's the one thing that really struck me. And Martin, before this, we were discussing a little bit about my firms, and I would absolutely agree. They're quite special. I've been impressed by their passion and their commitment to their clients, commitment to their work, and the association itself. Now, I joined in September last year. My most recent background over the last 10 years, I guess you could say, is in professional bodies itself or in membership organizations. And my mandate has usually been to bring in innovation, transformation, drive change, and member engagement. And that's what I'm doing now. We've got some really fun projects on. Certainly significant changes afoot, but it's been a lot of fun. So I am new to this profession, but really happy to be here.
Well, you've certainly got a lot to offer the profession. Memoria, can you just check your microphone? There's a little bit of echo on it. I don't know if you've got another one. And while you are doing that, just before we kick off with the questions that we've got planned, in these uncertain times, are the people like yourself who are in unique roles, you're not just helping the accounting profession, you oversee a number of firms, you bring them together. Is it usual that leaders of accounting networks and alliances would be talking to one another, or do you tend to plow your own furrow, Martin?
Speaking personally, Rob, I think it's more the latter. Because there are people who've served in more than one role over the years, they take some relationships with them. So there is some crossover, obviously. And I think there's even a get-together in London each year of certain groups and associations and networks. But generally, I find that we plow our own furrows and we know what's happening within our world and our membership, and not so much about what's happening in the wider profession. And so one of the roles that I feel I have is to keep an eye on the sky, as it were, to keep an eye on what's happening throughout the profession, not only how it impacts members that I'm responsible for, but how it impacts the profession as a whole.
Memoria, you're fairly new to the game by certain standards, but have you found welcoming arms from your peers, and do you talk to them a lot?
Surprisingly so.
Because you're in adversarial positions, aren't you, in a way?
Yeah, in a way, we're competitive. We all want the best firms. We all want our firms to do well. I think that's the key thing. So we want the profession to do well as a whole, and we want the economic climate to thrive so that they can. So yes, we are competitive, but we do support each other in various ways as well. I do hear that echo. I'm sorry, I don't know where it's coming from.
Okay, well.
Or if it helps, I don't hear the echo at all.
You don't? Okay, good.
Maybe it'll be fine on the recording. The wonders of technology. Well, let's jump into the first question. And I'm sure I'm going to hear from you because you're two very positive people, how accounting firms have coped really well and there's so many opportunities out there. But I just want to focus on the negative deliberately because, yes, some firms have coped well, but I'm asking you what accounting firms have got wrong in this turbulent time. And for instance, have they made decisions too quickly, failed too quickly? Has anything been exposed in terms of firms' culture and structure? So answer that question in any way you like, but let's focus on what's not gone right for accounting firms. Memoria, can we start with you on that one?
Quite frankly, I was challenged by this question because my view is that the firms have actually coped very, very well. What it has done in some instances, when I've been speaking to some senior leaders, is they've said, it's been a huge opportunity for some members of my team to really shine, to take initiative and to deliver things above and beyond. And I've seen that with my own team. But it's also demonstrated where those people who weren't quite up to taking that kind of self-initiative or drive things through in their own accord, where they've been shown up. So I think it's been a kind of a testing time for some employees, whether they last longer or not, or whether they're going to need extra support. That's probably going to be the way forward. But for the most part, I'm really proud of the members. I think, our firms have done fantastically well in adopting and changing and responding really quickly.
And I'd expect to hear that because you're very proud of your firms. I know Martin actually only targets firms that are very proactive and probably doing a lot of things right. But maybe even looking to firms outside the communities that you deal in, there must be some examples of firms that have not got it right. I'll come back to you. But Martin, has it been perfect for firms? What's been exposed?
Well, 2 firms have gone bust, well, that I know of personally. So what have they done wrong? Well, just about everything on that basis, if they're going bust. So I think there's a huge number of, and I'm trying to remember the stat. I think the stat was that in the first 14 days of the COVID lockdown, so from March 23rd, forward 14 days, the members of my community had won over 200 new clients between them.
Wow.
And all of them were because their existing accountant of the businesses in question had shut up shop. And by shut up shop, I mean had not answered emails, had not answered the phone, not returned phone calls, not knowing where they were up to. So the profession as a whole, what I saw was a 4-stage response. Stage 1, get their own house in order in terms of cash flow. Stage 2 was to get the IT protocols worked out to allow remote working. Stage 3 was so like the firefighting of dealing with client issues. What's going on? We don't know. What's going on? We don't know. Until they worked out what they put out, the less came in. So then started putting out information, became proactive. And the 4th was the proper proactivity, which was going out to clients saying, how are you doing? And going by most vulnerable first, grade A second, everybody else third. But what I didn't see was that being widespread. I'm talking about the sharper firms here, the more proactive firms. In general, the run-of-the-mill compliance provider has gone quiet and has panicked and has frozen and is not available and has furloughed their team. The highest I saw was 80% furloughing in the time, average of 30%. And they just stopped because, and I think when you look back on that, it's not actually very surprising because we have a profession of technically minded individuals who are trained to record the past, and who are trained to look backwards and are trained to be compliant, and not those who are entrepreneurial, those who are trying to create opportunity, create value. That's not intrinsic. It's done within many firms, but not necessarily intrinsic. It can't be taken as a given. And as such, therefore, we saw a lot of firms, let's say, suffer because of that conditioning in their training. And when the pandemic came,
they were exposed.
That was that. If I may just go one step further, not just for what may have gone wrong, what's going to go wrong, is that I spoke to my group this morning on a Zoom call, and I asked the question that for people like me who have been espousing advisory services for 20 odd years, and my superiors gone before me who have been doing it for 35, 40 years, and nothing really changing in the profession until legislation changes, then I said it took a global pandemic to bring advisory to the fore, and only then because the client asked for it. We didn't take it to them. We gave it because we had it when they asked. And I said, what's going to happen now? Revert to type? Or is it going to be that we're suddenly some brand new proactive profession? And the answer I got, which I thought was very telling, was that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, Martin. Those who are proactively minded will continue. Those who aren't will go back to where they were. And I think that's very, very telling. And that's come from, a range of different firms as a consensus.
Yeah.
Memoria, follow-up thoughts on that?
I think what was really interesting about this situation, not only for the firms, but also us as an association, is it's given us the capability or the opportunity to have deep, meaningful conversations. And that's what our members have actually embraced with their clients. And as a result, they have been able to go deeper into an organization to get more advisory type work. They have been referred more readily. So those people who weren't picking up the phone, they call their friend and say, who's your accountant? I need help. Nobody's picking up the phone, and they've benefited from that. We haven't quantified that yet, but I'm going to now. Thank you, Martin, because I think that would be really interesting to look at. When you say what people have done wrong, one thing I have heard from some of our members is some of the larger organizations have just fired people, not even furloughed people, but fired people. So there are going to be some exceptional talent on the street too for our small to medium-sized organizations or mid-tier firms to pick up. And who's going to get the business at the end of the day? It's going to be the ones that are really paying attention to their clients and really caring, have kept those communications open and wide and had those deep conversations. And I think our firms will probably do far better at the end of the day than maybe some of the big ones, because, sometimes arrogance doesn't get you the contract at the end of the day. It's those, it's those real relationships that you have to support your clients that do and maintain them.
Very good. And in terms of strategy, has this pandemic, in your view, changed what professional firms are doing? If you think of pre-COVID-19, they would have had initiatives that they were pushing through. Accountants are notoriously lagging in making quick decisions and implementing strategy quickly. You hear sometimes that they've made decisions in 2 weeks that would have taken them 2 years, and other times you hear that they've put things on hold and the uncertainty has stopped them making decisions. Martin, what sense are you getting on whether firms are executing better and faster or backing off amidst the uncertainty with their strategy?
Interesting change of tide here, Rob. First of all, the conversation was around how working from home had allowed 10-hour office days to become 3.5-hour working from home days, because no one's going into the office for a chat with somebody else and then realizing they've been chatting for an hour and wondering which client to bill that to. So as a result, we were seeing increased efficiencies. Okay, and I would stretch that over March, April, and the early part of May. What I saw switching from about first week of May onwards was the herd mentality coming back in, again, confirmed in this morning's call, which is that for those who work at home with no other distractions, i.e. children, to look after, then they will probably work from home in perpetuity, because they can now. Technology allows that. For those who have got childcare issues, elderly parent issues, or other considerations, there's this mentality, this herd mentality saying, get me back in the office, get me back in the team, let me be among adults again, and so on. And so we're seeing phased returns to work from Monday onwards for a number of our members. For example, one member that spoke in depth about it is bringing 50% of their team back on Monday, and have employed a health and safety expert to set the office up to allow social distancing in all areas. So I think at first the working from home was the big thing, but I think now we're seeing a novelty wearing off for some, not all, but for some. And the other thing that interested me is that I am friends with a shop owner here in town who was preparing for sale prior to COVID, and they were looking forward to retirement as being this utopian vision. And now that they've had 8 weeks at home, they're thinking retirement might not be up to be after all, and have changed their mind on sale of the business now. So I wonder how many people there are in that position as well, and how that affects the M&A side of practices. So a lot going on right now.
Yeah. Well, Maureen, what's your take on whether firms are doing stuff faster or holding off with decisions?
So I think in terms of strategy, if it had to do with supporting clients or employees, those things were accelerated. So putting those mechanisms, systems, processes in place that would allow people to work from home, that enabled their clients to interact with them more readily, those things were accelerated. We did that as an association. I took the decision in February. It's not an if, it's a when. So let's make sure that we accelerate our own systems and processes and put in these things now instead of waiting, so we can work at home. And I think our firms all did the same thing. So if it had to do with supporting employees and clients, those were accelerated. If it had to do with things like joint ventures or mergers or extending your office space or your physical presence, strategically, those things have been put on hold.
Yeah.
Because they need to be reevaluated in the light of how we're working.
Have we found that some firms have been exposed in their culture and the way they make decisions because COVID calls for agility and they've not been able to make the right decisions quickly enough? Have you had any sense of that? Not perhaps in your member firms, but in the profession generally, Martin?
Yes. Yes, there's an awful lot of that. Often we find that multi-partner firms are actually sole practitioners under one brand, living in silos.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Audit doesn't talk to tax, tax doesn't talk to audit, and so on and so forth. Mm. And so I've seen a lot of situations where one person thinks they're in charge and everybody else disagrees. Yeah. And as a result of that, stasis. There's just no movement. Nobody can make a decision because nobody's got consensus. And so, yes, I have seen that. And I would characterize that as being present in probably 4 to 8 partner size firms.
Okay. Memoria, are you seeing that firms have been exposed in their decision-making processes by not being agile enough in this?
From the experience I've had with my firms, no. I can't really speak for the broader profession, but I haven't really seen that. We tend to have sort of a senior partner manager type thing. They seem to work quite well together. The larger of the firms that we do have a senior partner, and then they've had like COVID task forces and things like that have been working to sort of drive these particular initiatives forward. So I think they're in a pretty good place in terms of what they've been able to do. There have been some innovative things with respect to leadership. And I think that what they've done is they've managed to restructure how they work.
How do you mean?
Well, so for example, to use Martin's example of the parent of a young child, and they just can't wait to get back because juggling the time between having your toddler run around your ankles and having to get your work done and doing 8 hours, they've shifted from hour mentality to task mentality. So that's a really interesting concept when you think of it, because if you started shifting a chunk of your work that way, you would be hugely more flexible. But again, a lot of it has to do with the culture of the organization itself. It has to do with the culture of the country of which you come from. Is it Spain where you want and have to be together, or Greece where you want to have to be together? Or are you happier being more independent as you might be in the Nordics? So there's so many different things at play here. And then what you do in some place like Malta, where you might be able to walk to work, would be very different from London. So all these sorts of things, I don't think there's one answer to this one. Every situation is so different, whether it's with respect to logic, culture, company culture, or the culture of the country.
Rob, can I come in there?
Sure.
Memoria just made a profound insight that I want to make sure we don't ignore or overlook. I have seen evidence of what you just described there, moving from an hourly-based mentality to a task-based mentality. I've seen evidence of that from working from home that you just described there. And what that indicates, what Memoria just touched upon there, is that if a firm moves to a task or project-based mentality, it opens the door to value pricing. And it allows a firm to now consider value pricing where previously they haven't been able to get their head around the concept, how it would be sold, how it would be marketed, and certainly how it would be tracked in-house.
Because they're tied to the billable hour.
Correct. And a task-based mentality is step one in opening that door. And Memoria just made that inference there. I wanted to make sure that was picked up on in this meeting, because that's a profound insight.
It is. It's a very
good way consulting firms work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the bridge, isn't it, between compliance and advisory if you can adjust your pricing.
Mm.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
excellent point. Yeah, thanks for picking up on that. Now, we touched on the working from home thing. It is early days, but it seems to have been well received. It seems to have gone well, but we are starting to see an ease in lockdown in some countries. And the question becomes, what does reintegration of the workforce looks like? Now that people have got a taste of disparate working, now that they've got a taste from working at distance, how do you think firms are going to reintegrate their workforce back into their offices, or is working in an office a thing of the past now, Martin?
So 3 or 4 models in play right now from a UK and US perspective. These two are. One is a third, bringing a third of the workforce in and keeping 2/3 at home. So team A, team B, team C, essentially.
Right.
And rotating them on weeks. So week 2, team 2 comes in. Week 3, team 3 comes in, and rotated that way to allow for social distancing where other measures within the infrastructure of the office can't allow for it. I have seen also certain firms, for example, in Wales, lockdown still much stronger than it is in England. So at this moment in time, there are certain Welsh firms I know who aren't even contemplating return to the office at any time in the future. They're expecting to work from home now, maybe through the summer, maybe as long as that. Mm. And others that I'm seeing bringing more than a third back to the office are looking at the airline approach, which is seat taken, middle seat empty, seat taken. I'm working on that basis. And I know that some firms in London, for example, have installed the clear perspex screens that we see at checkouts at supermarkets at this moment in time in their offices. So that somebody who is working at a desk or a hot desk, pod style scenario has a clear barrier from the person that might be sat 2 meters away from.
So still social distancing.
Still social distancing, but a way of getting more than a third of the workforce back in the office.
Memoria, do you see we're going to have big, expensive offices and thousands per square feet and buying up all these offices, or has the model changed forever now?
I think the model could have changed forever, but again, it really depends on where you are. It depends on the culture of the organization. So if you hadn't done any home office working before and then you were put into that, you're going to come much further than, let's say, a firm in London that had, agile working as a norm. So I think it really depends, but I think what this has done is shaken everything up. It's shaken business models up. It's shaken on how we work. And I don't think, I've asked this question to some of my firms and to the managing partners. Are you going to go back to normal? Yeah, we'll go back to normal. But what that normal is really depends on where you started. So.
Yeah. I'm thinking when Martin mentioned the A, B, and C type approach, I don't know if you've ever been to Manila in the Philippines, but the traffic situation is quite unique in that there are millions and millions of cars. And what they do is divide the population in half. So half can use their cars Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and half can use them Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then anyone can use them Sunday. Now, the roads are absolutely rammed on any one of those days. So you think if they all use their cars on a given day, it would be bedlam. But there is some kind of new normal emerging, Martin, isn't there, in terms of how firms are going to set up their offices? Because now they've got a taste of this, I've heard that some firms are not ever going back to an office, but they will stay remote working because they've made it work and the clients have got used to it.
I have heard of examples of that. So whether that's representative or not, I would be very skeptical and doubtful at this point that that's representative of the profession. But are there individual cases? Absolutely there are. And there are firms now who are going to worry commercial landlords greatly by vacating their offices. For sure. Another strange quirk of this lockdown that has interested me is many British firms and US firms, North American firms would apply to as well, have used outsourcing for many, many years to suggest that the work gets done regardless of what happens to the firm in the UK. That was always the model. Somebody doing the work, while we're asleep, it's still being done for you. Was always a selling point of outsourcing. And it's interesting that the vast majority of outsourcing in the UK goes to India and then the Philippines after that and beyond after that. And of course, India's lockdown was a lot sharper than ours. India's lockdown was much more severe. And I think it's been the case that certain outsourcing providers did not have a provision for this. So their workers in India couldn't work from home. They had to come to the office, and they can't come to the office because of lockdown, therefore there's no outsourcing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So that was tremendous. So will we see a new normal en masse with regard to office premises? No, don't think so. I think the herd mentality will prevail there. But will we see exceptions to rules more than we used to? Will we see more innovation with regard to flexible working that Memoria was just discussing? Yes.
Yeah. Memoria, let's talk about growth and recovery, because we know that firms have lost clients. We know they've got depleted pipelines. We know they've not been focusing on marketing and business development over the last few months. So how equipped and trained do you think these firms are to replace what's been lost?
The client firms or our accounting firms, because our accounting firms, our firms, have benefited. They've benefited because they've gone deeper and they have been referred more. So I think our firms have actually benefited from this. I think we're at that juncture now where people are starting to reflect and take a step back. In fact, we have a conference on Thursday, in our North American virtual conference, in which we're going to be looking at different scenarios around this, about where do we find those opportunities? What are those new services that our firms can be providing that complement the skills that we currently have? Our firms have concentrated right now on the clients that they have and supporting them. One thing that I heard, a story that I heard this morning, which was really interesting, is they have been working with 2 competitive clients and getting them to work collaboratively together, so that actually they're not spending their resources fighting each other. They're actually using and pooling their resources so that they both come out of this. So this is where our firms, I think, have been problem solving in a really unique kind of way. So they've been going deeper into their clients' needs, developing that further. They've been trying to figure out new ways to problem solve, bringing people together potentially to create something new. And now is that time where they're looking to the future. What are the industries that they should be getting into? What are the skills that they need to develop to take advantage of these new opportunities that they're facing? I think it's going to be really interesting to look back at this in about 3 months' time to see where that's taken us.
Yeah. Martin, you talk a lot about business development in your conference speaking and your books. How equipped do you feel firms are to replace what's lost? And I'm sure you're going to tell me that some firms are better off now than they were before.
I think in terms of referrals they are, but it is a rare firm that is both proactive and referral based at the same time.
How do you mean?
Because referral is typically an act that happens to you. You are acted upon with a referral. It is far more likely for a referral to come to you to say, I've been recommended to you by name of client, than it is for the firms that have gone out to say who should we be working with to their existing clients. So if we see a proactive referral, fantastic. That's always the diamond standard. It's always going to be the diamond standard. But I think those who have grown because things have fallen into their lap. So the question is, are they equipped to deal with business development issues? And I think that is somewhere between no and no. They're not. Never have been. Never been part of the training. Negotiation, proposal writing, pricing, closing. Never been part of the ACA qualification. Still isn't. Not going to be in the near future, as far as I know. So that's not a skill set that the profession has as standard. It is akin to me being asked whether I am ready now to open an accounting practice as a result of this post-COVID era. No, I'm not. I haven't got the first clue what to do. I would not be able to deliver on that basis. So no, I don't think they are equipped. And I think for firms who grow by referral reactively, they don't care particularly. I think by firms who are proactive and do understand that the gold that they can represent, the highest average fees, the most enjoyable work, the most emotional impact they can have in their clients' lives comes from built relationships. And built relationships comes from talking to their best clients and other sources about who should benefit from the skill set they've got. So when they're proactive, and that's maybe less than 5% of the profession as a whole, but when they're proactive in that sense, are they equipped? Then absolutely they're equipped. And the rest of it just comes together because it becomes far more consultative in the sell. For practices who are looking at and saying, how do we market? How do we sell? How do we close? How do we price? They've got a lot of challenges ahead of them. And I've always used the maxim, which is an unpopular maxim: the more instruction you need, the less likely you are to succeed. Because this is human to human here.
Could I ask Martin a question? what I'm starting to see in some of my firms is bringing on professionals like business development people and marketing people, as you've seen in other professional groups, like consultancies and so forth. But you're having experts that are even at partner level that are a marketing partner. How much are you seeing that as a trend? I think it's very positive because that actually addresses what we were just discussing. But I was wondering, is it a trend just in my own mind, or is it something that's happening more and more?
It comes in waves, Memoria, but it's not commonplace.
Right.
So firms, for example, let's bring two different flavors into the mix here. Flavor one, a firm who believes they should do some marketing. Right. Okay, they will hire a marketing manager. A marketing manager who typically is 23 years old and goes on LinkedIn right after the job offer is given and going, I just got the job at so-and-so, now what do I do? You know, and that's because the hiring firm doesn't know marketing, so I have no idea what it was looking for, right. No idea on the deliverables that this marketing manager now has to give, and no idea whether anything's working or not. What they will do is they'll say, this is how much we spent, this is how much we've got back, it does or does not work. That will be the entire metric employed by various firms. The larger up the scale you go, especially in the top 100, you see a change.
Is this flavor two?
Flavor two. So, thanks, Rob. Yeah, flavor two. So when we get into there, I can't remember my own little setups. So when we get into that, then you see a change in culture. Then you see firms with tremendous resource, with far more commercially minded leadership, right. Therefore saying, marketing's for the marketers. Let's have a marketing department. Business development is for the business developers. Let's give it to them. And I remember in the very late 90s, early 2000s, there was this trend of suddenly employing unemployed bank managers to become business development specialists in accounting firms. And the rationale was, well, they've got relationships with all the local businesses, so let's get them in. But they couldn't sell either. So it was still for the business owner. It was still, why should I break this loyalty barrier that I've had to my existing accountant for 25 years to go over there for any reason other than price? And because the bank manager couldn't sell, there was no clear value prop, so there was no deal. So that failed. But again, it's because the accounting profession didn't know what they were trying to hire in the first place. So I think I would draw a very clear distinction between top 100 type firms, commercially led, and practicing accountants who are not commercially led.
Here's, if I can ask a question and take back control of my own panel.
Sorry.
It's a fact that some companies out there have not been well served by their current accountants, but they're still good businesses, and there will be opportunities for accounting firms. Now, in asking this question about business development and marketing, to what degree are they equipped and ready to pick up these opportunities? Because these firms that have not been well served still need to be sold to, still need to be engaged in dialogue, still need to be brought on. They need a relationship that's nurtured. They need to be pitched and proposed to and then engaged as a client. So do firms really have the capacity to be able to do that and capitalize on these opportunities? And that's why people like Martin and I are out there teaching them business development skills so that they can take advantage of what is a good situation for them if they do it right. Any comeback on that before we move on?
Sorry, I should let Memoria speak there. Memoria.
That's okay.
And the only thing I would say is that the challenge is always economic imperative. It's a business model that does not require new business into the firm month in, month out to pay the mortgage, to pay the salary bills, and so on. In a sales-led organization, generally without recurring income, you have that. So the leadership is typically hungry and is going after new business because it's trying to grow and it's trying to feed mouths. In a professional services firm, you don't have that. You have recurring fees and large loyalty. And then you have a team who are not trained in the specialism of winning work. And that, I think, is the primary resistance to that culture being adopted.
Yeah. Some thoughts for you there, Memoria.
No, it's really interesting because in some of the firms that, again, I'm just still getting to know all our different firms. And some firms have that expertise in-house, and it's so impressive. It's not the 23-year-old with a LinkedIn page. And they're really ambitious and, as you say, hungry. And those are the ones that I want everybody else to learn from. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity for us to facilitate that, to also facilitate that business development exercise and actually be in the middle of it. That's my background. So I'm looking forward to it. and but it's using their expertise and shining a light on it. So the business, we do help sell for them to their prospective clients. So I think that's part of our role.
Well, let's ask a final question as we sum up. Because unless they find a vaccine pretty quickly, we're still going to be in lockdown and social distancing for some time. There's no doubt we're heading into an economic slowdown and a recession. There's a lot of people saying that 2021 is going to be more painful than 2020 because of what we're storing up in terms of loans that are going to need to be paying back and delayed tax bills. So give us your best thinking on what you feel is coming up for the rest of 2020 and then in 2021 for accounting firms. Martin, let's start with you on that one.
Well, first of all, I would always hold that in a downturn or an upturn, the accountant has got the answer. So if you're in a downturn and money's tight and where's the money coming from, and we need to get our house in order, we need to be clear on budgets, clear on forecasts, clear on cash flow, that's your accountant. That's your accountant for that one. If we're in an upturn, profits are superb, resources and surpluses are superb, wealth management is now our question mark, it's accountants. I've got the answer for that one. So, if it's in a period of stagnation, how do I incrementally get off this plateau of mine? That's strategic planning. The accountant's got the answer for that one. So whatever market we find ourselves in, and I think I agree with you, Rob. I think we're already in recession, but we haven't published the figures yet. The accountants we've got the answer no matter what. So I don't think accountants should fear a downturn in the economy. I think
fearing getting paid, Martin.
Just where I was about to go there.
It's cash flow.
There's a fear in having compliance-only clients who do not value the service, because they, in a tight time, will go for the cheapest provider at that time, and they will break rank and they will break loyalty barrier. And if the concentration of fee portfolio is sat in compliance work, basic compliance work, then the recession and technology companies are coming for your cash. Simple as that. Where you've got a mix of what I would call beyond compliance, basic financial literacy, advisory, cash flow forecasting, budgeting, and so on, then I think you're much better equipped and you've got much less reason to be concerned. And I already see firms, if I look at the firms in my little community, I already see their thoughts turning back now to pipeline, to new business opportunities, as I would hope they would.
Mm. Memoria, what do you think is coming up for the rest of this year and 2021 for the accounting world?
Well, I'm forever an optimist. So a bit like Martin in that respect, because I think our firms are really well placed to be able to adapt, and if they can, and they can broaden their skill set, to look at advisory in a more meaningful type of way, they are positioning themselves very, very well. I also think associations like ours are a good facilitator for that global reach, because people are not going to be hopping on planes. People are not going to be doing the same sorts of things as they used to be doing. So having colleagues that you can rely on around the world to be able to help you give that advice and the right kind of advice will be paramount. Mm. And you need to be able to trust those people. So I think there's a combination of things that I think you always have to look at these sort of terrible situations as there is opportunity there. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is identify those opportunities with the membership. So.
The question remains, are accountants and the firms they represent good enough to take advantage of these opportunities? There's certainly they're going to be out there, but these firms have got to be good enough to capitalize on that. Right, Martin?
Not a one-size-fits-all answer, that one, Rob. Some will be, some never will be.
Yeah. I know we're going to see a lot of movement, do you think, in terms of M&A activity? Some firms are going to get swallowed up, and even some accounting networks, so we're going to see some movement there.
Who's that one for, Rob?
Either, sorry.
Memoria, let's go to you.
I couldn't really say in terms of the networks. In terms of M&A activity more broadly, I think that's a huge opportunity actually for some of our firms. Mm. That's the one thing that I've seen, in terms of advisory and M&A, that's to me one of those big golden opportunities out there. If they've got the capacity to do it, they should be doing it and looking out towards their pipeline and seeing what's available to them to position themselves in a way that they will be able to maximize their impact there.
Yeah. Martin, final word from you.
Definite surge in M&A. Always love a good surge in M&A, because one of the lovely byproducts of M&A, I love the byproduct of it, is that individuals now signed up to a brand they did not buy into and not happy with spin out after the non-compete ends. And when they spin out, they create something in their own image, which is ultimately a lot more dynamic than the thing they left. Which creates a lot more new small firms, boutique style firms, but firms who focus on the well-being of the SME's professional and personal aspirations. And for me, as you know, Rob, that's the most noble iteration of an accountant's work anyway.
Yeah, I think your 3 watchwords are proactive, caring, and hungry. Is that right, Martin?
They are indeed.
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, listen, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for your insights today. We've covered a lot of ground. It's been a wonderful conversation. You've been very frank with your views and brought in a lot more than we were expecting as well, in terms of the different tangents and angles that we've got to think about. In a word, how do you feel about the future? Are we confident? Are we happy? Are we bullish? Are we positive? Are we uncertain? Just encapsulate that in a word or two as we say goodbye. Memoria.
I'm always positive. That's the way I look at the world. And you've got to find the positive in all these things, the opportunities and all these things. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm carrying on, transforming and changing my association so it can adapt and be responsive and meet my members' needs.
Sounds like you're doing an incredible job. Martin, in a word, where are you at?
Excited. There's always new opportunities, new deals, new value to be created and provided. Excited. A lot of opportunity out there right now.
Yeah, it sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And if we want you on another panel in the future, would you entertain us by taking a slot and sharing some more?
Okay.
Sure.
That's the pressure question. You have to say yes. Well, thanks so much for your time, and I hope you people watching enjoy the recording.